everybody, and welcome back to the Talk Busy with Lizzy podcast. I'm your host, Lizzy, and as always, we are back with a very special guest. This week's guest is really, really cool. Her name is Lauren, and she actually wrote a musical and is now producing a musical about some of the trauma she's gone through in her own life. So she came on the podcast to share about her life story and then the musical that she has curated because of it. So I'm so excited to have her on. Without further ado, let's hear her story and the amazing work that she's doing.
Excited to have you on and talk about your musical. It's so cool. I've
Yeah.
been seeing all your content. I'm like, that looks awesome.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much. It takes a lot to make it, honestly.
I bet that's something I could never do. So it's really amazing to see. Do you just want to give a quick introduction of who you are and then jump into your own story?
Yeah, of course.
Awesome.
All right, so I'm Lauren Goodwin, and I'm 19 years old. I just had my birthday last month.
Happy birthday.
Oh, thank you. And I love theater, and because I love theater, it's been a huge outlet for me to find my voice, and through that, I was able to write my musical. So, going into my story now, I was born in a blended family kind of, and my parents had a divorce during COVID, and at first it was kind of just out of nowhere. They didn't give us any intel, which I mean it makes sense. To some degree, it was very adult topics, and eventually while they were still separating, I found out some things about my dad cheating on my mom, and it was really hard. And honestly, it kind of strained my relationship with him because he wasn't home a lot growing up, and so to learn where his priorities were, it was really difficult for me to grasp that and still believe in a relationship with him.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, I held on to a lot of resentment towards him for a very long time. And during this time, my mom moved to a new house finally, and she just found a lot of, she grew her testimony through this, which was so incredible. She's so strong. Props to her. But but during this time, it was just so conflicting for me because I had to back and forth houses. So I was going to one house where it was completely empty and lacked the, church and everything. And then I had one household that absolutely loved it, did everything we could to include the gospel and the teachings of it into our home. And so that was a huge thing for me, was also during that transitional period. But with time, I was able to lean on my Heavenly Father and grow a relationship with Him too, and it's helped me a lot. Oh my gosh, I cannot answer that. But yeah, and I've just seen His hand a lot in my life, and it's so incredibly difficult when you're facing trial, learning so much about who your dad really is and stuff, so it was very challenging. But then on top of that, I was kind of at that age, I turned 15, and I was at that age where I was starting to put myself out there and dating and stuff. And that's when I met a guy. I'm going to try my best not to say his name. He also came from a home like that. His dad also cheated on his mom, and it was incredibly difficult. And so we both kind of, I guess, trauma bonded, and we became really good friends. But eventually he just really liked me, and for a while I was very like skeptical. I was like, I don't know if I really want to yet, but eventually I was like, you know what, like we're such good friends, I don't mind like trying it out and like dating, seeing where it goes. But then he within a couple months he started progressively essaying me, and with time like he kept pushing my boundaries, and the more I kept saying no, the more he wouldn't listen, and it was incredibly difficult. But like with I'm trying to think, sorry.
Good.
So difficult. But I was raped by the time we were like seeing each other for 7 months. But literally after that, like his mom like she could tell what was happening, so she eventually was like, oh, like you can't hang out with this girl anymore, actually. So it was that kind of ended everything, which I'm really grateful for that, because I think the issue with me was that I was at my lowest, and my like self-esteem was just so gone that I couldn't like really have the like willpower to really like stick up for myself and like leave that. So I'm grateful I had that with her. She cared enough to do that. I say that because now she kind of defends him, but it's whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's such an unfortunate thing that happens, is the like, sorry, not to cut you off, but like the defense
absolutely.
from like guys' families and friends, even after it's like been
Yes.
clear what happened. It's devastating. Anyways, go on, sorry.
Absolutely. No, that was totally, yeah, exactly. I think that's one of the hardest things. Like, I know later down the road, if I was a mom and I heard my kid did that, oh my gosh, I don't even know what I'd do. Like, it'd be devastating. But yeah, so she helped me out of that, thankfully. And like, with time, I was just really like messed up because I had a relationship with my dad where he like encouraged me to keep secrets from my mom, and anytime I like told him how I felt, it kind of felt like just dismissed and put off, like it didn't really matter as much. And the same thing was happening with this kid, because anytime I'd like try to set a boundary, he wouldn't respect that. And also he'd just tell me not to tell people and stuff. It was just really messy, to a point where I was bottling my feelings, and like no one knew what I was going through for like 2 to 3 years. And yeah, it was really messed up. And literally it wasn't, I like did theater a little bit in 6th and 7th and 8th grade, like all through middle school. But it wasn't till freshman year, when I was going through that I actually started taking it more seriously, because I felt like safe in the classroom to be like vulnerable, if that makes sense. Like I was able to like cry and like do all that stuff and not have to like hide from it. And it was just, it felt like better for me to express myself through that, and it was a great outlet for me. And with time, I started taking it a lot more seriously. I went into a thespian festival, and I auditioned for Open Jar. If you don't know what that is, it's like a intensive training in New York City for Broadway. Cool. It's very cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I loved it, but I didn't really think much of it because there was like this huge line, and like I wasn't like one of those kids that has been doing that since like 5 years old. So I didn't think much of it. I was just like, I'll audition for the fun of it, because a lady that taught a dance workshop there that actually did the auditions, she was like, you should come. And I was like, okay, I will. And so I went, and I like sang my song, and then I got out, and I didn't think much of it. I like, at the end of the day, I was kind of just proud to even like go through that audition, because that was like one of the scariest ones for me. And then a little bit after, my friend Cameron got accepted, and she was like, "Did you check your promotion tabs in your email?" And then I was like, "No." And then I checked it, and I got accepted, and I was so happy.
That's so cool.
Yeah. And so I went over to that intensive during the summer last year, and oh my gosh, it was such a good experience. We got to see so many shows, and we got to learn so much choreography that's like literally on Broadway and stuff. It was so fun. And on the plane, I kind of just had this thought, like, to look at my old songs I wrote when I was 14. Because when I was 14, that's when I started, like, just writing lyrics just about, like, my dad and stuff. So I, like, kind of revisited that. And I was like, actually, these are, like, now that I'm thinking about it, imagine a Dear Evan Hansen-esque musical, but about families. And so I did. And so at first, this musical was going to be just about the dad and about what he did. But then I thought more about it, and I thought, how about we expand that to how what he did was kind of the root, built off of how his kids experienced things and how it swayed them in some directions that could have been avoided maybe with the right guidance and the right example. So I wrote more about it just on plane rides. I edited the songs. I wrote like the general plot idea that I wanted. I wrote characters. And then when I got home, I just kind of locked in. I was writing a draft for it, and then I shared it with a few of my friends actually. By then once I started writing it, I kind of built up the courage to actually share my story. And so I shared it with some friends, and they absolutely loved it. They were like, "Oh my gosh, so many people can relate to this. You should take this way more seriously. This could really heal a lot of people." And so I decided, yeah, I actually do want to take this seriously. This has already helped me find my voice, and maybe it can help others find theirs. So
That's beautiful. That's awesome.
Thank you. So I kept working on it, and eventually, with time, I worked up the courage to tell my mom even what happened, and it was really hard. Oh my gosh, it's not easy, especially because she's just done so much for us. So when you come with this news, "Oh, I know you've done so much to protect us and care for us, but something happened and I never told you," that's just, it's hard. But I opened up to her, and she was really upset at first, but she was so grateful that I was able to finally tell her, and she wanted me to know that it wasn't my fault, and I really needed that. And so I wrote that in the script, actually. I thought that moment should be shared, so that way victims overcoming that and healing that can have that.
I love that so much, because I feel like a lot of times that's the biggest reason, victims don't come forward, is no one's going to believe me. They're not going to help me through it. And yes, unfortunately, there are incidences where that is the case, but there are also incidences where you have someone like your mom who helps you through that and guides you through that. And so I think that's really awesome that you're including that.
Absolutely. I feel like it's so hard knowing that some people just don't have that, but I'm so glad I can, in my own way, be that for them, because they need it too. And a lot of it was really healing. I also had a scene where instead of my character's name's Lydia, I kind of made them a little similar to our names, but not alike, so that way people don't catch on. But Lydia, she absolutely, for her situation, she was able to get out on her own terms. She did actually fight back and get out, and I felt like that was healing for me. and other victims watching that, because sometimes we don't think we have the strength to do that in the moment, but I feel like it's good to learn after our experience that we totally can do whatever we need to get out of that situation, and it's not afraid to go for help, and it's not your fault. All of that I felt was so important in that script, and it was needed. So thank you.
Yeah.
So that was really huge for me. But also on top of that, getting into it, I have siblings that also were affected after the divorce. My older sister and my older brother are not included in the show because I haven't been living with them, so I haven't really seen how this has affected them. And a lot of this show is really written on how I've perceived things, so it's really interesting, and it's not fully accurate to everything everyone's dealt with. I actually learned more about my sister's situation after I wrote it, and I was like, holy crap, girl, because she went through a lot too. She I won't name names, but she had an abusive husband. He was actually physically abusive, and he was emotionally draining too. He didn't allow her to have any independence. She had to rely on him because that's how he had control. And it was very difficult for her because she couldn't go to anyone for help, because that would mean she'd have to live with our mom again and be taken care of again and have to restart all over after she just got married. So yeah, it was so difficult for her. And but eventually my mom did find out about what was happening, and my mom helped her find the strength to move out and move in with us, and now we've been hanging out for 2 years. She's been living here. It's been nice, and I think she's been feeling so much better. She's already exclusively seeing someone now. Actually, just recently this week, they made it official, which is great. I'm so happy for her. He's a great guy, and I think it's so important. She has, psoriasis on her skin, and I feel like a huge thing, too, that I also wrote in the script, is how guys always find excuses for the way they treat people. Not guys, people in general. Oh my gosh, sometimes when I speak about the show, I sound like a man-hater. I promise I'm not.
You're good.
But there's some guys, when they're guilty, they absolutely make excuses for why they're treating someone that way. My dad made so many, and he still swears to this day that he's never cheated on my mom and never did anything wrong, when I have known so much more than he can imagine. And my older sister, he absolutely, her husband cheated on her in the past, and he literally said, sorry, I spiral when I tell stories.
You're good, don't worry. Me too.
But he's always given her such a hard time about her skin and the way she looks, and that justifies him cheating on her, which totally does not. If you love someone, it doesn't matter what they have. And she's beautiful, does not matter, actually. But this guy that she's dating now, he gets her a dress that she'll and he'd be like, oh yeah, don't hide in hoodies this time because I think you're beautiful. I don't think you need to hide anything. And it's so sweet.
That's amazing.
I love that for her, because she really needs that, honestly. She has such a hard time with her self-esteem, and I feel like when she kind of married that guy, it gave her such a hard time, and it made her feel worse, because that's a lot of what she struggles with, even living with us. But I think she's going to get better with him, because he's going to bring that back. He's going to bring her some confidence.
Yeah.
But yeah.
That's awesome. I love when you find that person who takes everything that happened to you in the past, any hurt, especially with having guys that have treated you terribly, and they completely rewrite the story. You just see how beautiful a man can genuinely treat a woman. You see how you're supposed to be treated, and they actually like value you and value your worth and completely rewrite even your own like brain chemistry on how you see yourself and how you see the world. It's just so cool.
It's so cool. I 100% agree. It's so sweet when someone new comes along and they 100%, they understand that someone in the past definitely rewired your brain to think the way you do, and they're going to try their best to do the repair for the damage they didn't even cause. And that's like the most beautiful thing I've seen in relationships from recovering from an abusive past, and I love it. It's so great. And on that note, I also have a younger sister. She hasn't dated anyone yet exclusively. My dad, after seeing what's happened with my dad and with me and Maddie, she's kind of just hated the thought of dating in general. She thinks it's terrifying, and I don't blame her in the slightest. It's scary. It's still scary for me, but but our mom has always helped us with that. Like, she's told us she's literally exclusively dating someone now too, and she's told us, like, even though I've had like 3 failed marriages, I've still found someone great, and I never gave up on the idea of that, because I can't blame the world and like a group of people as a whole for something one person did, and I have to continue finding my person, even if I have to keep finding them at like in my mid-40s. So that was honestly cool. And so I think it's helped her a lot. She started being more open-minded to dating now at 16. She's went on a couple dates by now, and she's built lots of relationships with good friends, and I'm wishing the best for her. I think she has the right guidance, and she has learned a lot from everything going on around her, and so I do wish the best for her. There was a moment, though, when she absolutely was working towards a relationship with my dad a lot more than me and Maddie were. I mean, Maddie actually just kind of cut him off entirely because he's not like her biological dad. Like I said in the beginning, we were a blended family, so she was with my mom, and so she kind of just cut him off altogether because he won't say he disowned her, but he kind of did. And I kind of just have been distant from him around this time, and so I haven't like really worked towards it and like tried to improve it because I was very resenting towards him for a while. But she like kept trying because like she didn't really know what was happening with him for a while. She was kind of just like, oh, like after this divorce, I'm sure my dad will spend more time with me because that's what this means. Like, we're going to get to visit him and stuff, and he'll make it more about us. But when that wasn't the case, because he was on his phone, like, every time he was at dinner with us and stuff. And just little things like that, she just noticed, like, man, he, like, does not really care that much to really work towards a relationship. And I think once she got past, like, this whole, like, pulling at, like, him to get this relationship she wants and to feel like she matters to him, she's realized that all she can do, really, is focus on the people that she knows loves her unconditionally. She doesn't have to find it in someone else. She shouldn't look for it from people. She should just be happy with the people she has. And I mean, if she finds more, that's great, but I feel like you can't, work towards that with someone like that. I feel like it's very hard and very forced. But also, I mean, who can blame her? It's her dad. I totally understand 100% why you'd think, hey, let's have a relationship, let's spend quality time. Like, I totally get it. But she, unfortunately, it just has been a while, and she couldn't really have that with him for some time. I mean, things are better with our dad now, though. I mean, they still have their flaws. I still know in the long run, like, he still doesn't have that unconditional love for us. So I can't really go to him with this musical yet and stuff, because the way he will look at it is so different from anyone else, because he is guilty. He's 100% going to think this whole play is about how horrible he is, and that's just not the truth. This play is about how your actions can bring consequences on others and how it can affect their lives. That's what mostly this roots off of, and how really not just abusers, but anyone should be mindful of that. Some people probably don't even know how much they are messing with someone's mind. Like, I feel like manipulation is so common, it's unreal. Like, I feel like anyone can do it. Heck, I've probably done it before without realizing it. Like, I feel like we all could be a little more mindful of that. And so I wanted to showcase that, and that's what this really is about. It has nothing to do with, this is my dad, and this is why he sucks, and why we should,
Right. Yeah, I think that that's such a true thing of anyone, like, I was writing something the other day where I was like, understanding that we're not always a positive player in everybody's stories. Like, whether you were purposefully being rude or not, like, even if it was just accidental or you didn't realize things you were saying to someone and how it would affect them, that you are not going to be a positive player in every single person's life. And it's sad because we want to be a key, kind, helpful player to everybody, but we're human, and that's not how the world works. We are going to, and yes, you can like bring forgiveness into that and things can get better, but you're not always going to play a hero role in every single person's storyline. And so I think that that's really important and so cool that you're like recognizing of, it's not just about one person doing a terrible thing and it's the only thing you're focusing on. You're focusing on, hey, like, your actions have consequences. Whether your intention was to be kind or to not be kind, your action is still going to have consequences that could harm or help somebody. Like, that was another thing of like, intentions are invisible. So even if you did have proper intentions, they're invisible. So the consequence onto somebody else is what matters, not what your intentions necessarily were. And so I just think that that's really cool that you're recognizing of like, it's not just about your dad doing something terrible and you're only focusing on him doing that thing. It's just recognizing that his action did have consequences on you and your family. And any single person who does anything, their actions are going to have consequences. So anyways, I just wanted to say that really quick.
No, that's totally good. Yeah, that's the thing. Like, humans are so selfish. It's unreal. Like, to say we haven't done something only in our own best interest, like, that would be a lie. I feel like everyone has at one point in their life. Yeah. And this is not to dart at anyone, especially even people that have, like, you know, really affected me. I mean, if they see it and they don't like it, I mean,
that's on them, though.
That's on them.
They made their bed.
Yeah, that's kind of, I don't know, like, that's just what comes with what you've done. I feel like that's the hard way of seeing it. If someone did a play about me, heck, I probably wouldn't feel great about it, but I would know, like, that's their story, and I don't have a right to, like, I don't really have the right to give them a hard time about it when I'm the one that was the antagonist for a reason. Like, I had my reason to be in there. I would be happy about it, but I would understand it 100%. And so,
and I think it takes maturity too to look at something like that, recognize, like, because you're gonna get defensive. We're human. We get defensive. We don't want to be the bad guy, and so there is that moment. But it takes someone mature to be like, okay, that's how you saw me when I did this. Not what I meant to do, and I'm really sorry. And to instead be like, okay, I did that. and made them feel that way, and I need to recognize that in myself instead of getting mad at them for
100.
making something about their own story. Like, you can't get mad at them for the way that they recognized what you did. You can't get mad at them for the way they feel about what you did. You can only change your own behavior and actions.
Yes, exactly. And that's what I hoped this show could bring, is that, one, it can bring comfort to victims and knowing they're not alone and that they can, have someone to lean on and they can go for help for a lot of stuff, because this is a range of abusive relationships. Most of it is the emotional abusive and the a mental abuse that goes into things, and that's a huge factor in sexual assault in some ways too, which is why I still kept my raw end of the story in there, even though it was very hard and scary at first. But yeah, seriously, going into it, it's not just for victims, but for people to gain perspective that you might not be perfect and you might have to recognize that you probably did hurt someone, and that's totally fine. That we all make mistakes, and I'm not here to dart anyone, but it's good to gain that perspective and really learn from it. I feel like the biggest thing with my dad is that instead I'd have conversation with him repeatedly about the stuff he'd do, and I'd see no progress and no growth. It would always be but I didn't do that. I don't know what you're talking about. That was never my intention, or whatever. And I'm like, okay, even if it wasn't your intention, it doesn't take away from the fact that you choose to talk over me. You don't really choose to listen to what I'm saying and take it into account. You just believe your side of things, and you don't want to change your narrative about how you never did any wrong. And that's just not a good way to be. You can't be stuck on your ways. I've been a bully before. I'm aware of this. I sucked in elementary school. So that's just something to be self-aware about. So yeah, it was just a huge thing for me, is self-awareness and awareness towards abusive relationships and how they can really fog up your mind. But also, on top of that, in Act 2, a lot of it can be still the rising action and the conflict, but once we get down from that, you see them recover in healthier relationships, each of the kids and stuff, and how they learn from it and how they find people that are right for them. A huge thing for me, this guy and I aren't together anymore, but after I want to say it was 2 years. Yeah, 2 years after Kenzie, there was this guy, and at first I was so terrified because he did move a little fast, but he was also coming from a place of being used and stuff. So with him, he thought that the only way he had a chance with me was to move fast. And for me, I'm like, whoa, dude. We barely know each other. So, that was crazy. But once we got behind that, because I did, think it was very odd after, what we've talked about and stuff. So I felt like there was more to him. So I kind of gave him time, the benefit of the doubt, which it was scary, but I'm actually grateful I did, because he did turn out to be great, and we did date for a year and 3 months. It was pretty good. We just decided that we were probably gonna be better off as friends after a while, but it was it wasn't we ended on horrible terms. But this guy, he absolutely was so great while we were together, though. He always respected my boundaries, which I know is the bare minimum, but to me that meant a lot, because I was pushed around a lot in high school, and I felt like he was one of the few people I actually could feel safe around, and that was so important. So I'm grateful.
And when you're just getting out of relationships like that, or just no one has treated you like that before, someone respecting your boundaries it's huge for you. Like, yes, it is a bare minimum thing, but in the moment it feels huge. That's something I don't mean, like, I'm not trying to take away from your story at all.
No.
I also have gone through something. My first boyfriend was sexually assaulted me a lot. And so my current boyfriend, we've been dating for 3 years, and
Oh,
yeah.
that's so
And
exciting.
thank you. And one of the things that really made me realize how much I liked him was how he respected my boundaries. Like,
Yeah.
the very first day, our very first date, he asked me, "Hey, like, when do you want our first kiss to be?" And that was something in my first relationship was really like stolen from me. And
Steve.
so, yeah. And so I was like, "Hey, like, really, please let it be after like 2 to 3 dates." And
Yeah.
he waited not just the 3 dates, but the 4 dates. So it was just like
Ooh.
respecting that boundary and even going a little beyond to respect it even further. It's huge. Like, yes, should it be bare minimum? Absolutely. But in that moment of finally realizing I'm in a healthy relationship, it's huge to you. So I totally understand what you're saying about, like, yes, it should be bare minimum. But when you're in that, someone respecting your boundaries is a huge deal.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like I remember like getting off of that relationship though, I did recognize there were some even then, like even though like that relationship was pretty healthy, there was definitely some things I could have changed, and so I've learned from those things. I like literally have a notes app now where it's like, okay, things I've learned from this relationship and how like what I can look for in the next and stuff like that. Like it's so important to me that when I find my person, like I can feel like my efforts are being met and like I'm respected, just all the things. And so that's so important. So that's things I really try to look out for. I'm currently not like putting myself out there in hopes for a relationship. I'm really just dating to meet people right now, just so I can have a feel for things, for what I'm looking for, because I feel like in high school, I easily jumped into things because I was so worried about my future and ending up like my parents. I wanted to feel a connection sooner in hopes that if I had a long connection already in high school, it could work out or something. So that was a huge thing for me in high school. I kept dating and I kept like putting a lot on myself for that. And I feel like now as an adult, I'm starting to recognize that I should really give myself more time, not only to figure out what I want, but to also build a relationship with myself and feel secure in myself before going into that so I can stand my ground. Because I feel like the hardest thing was self-esteem and standing your ground. So that's also very important. At least I think so.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's just the way I've seen things. And so writing this musical, it's been crazy. Like the amounts of edits and writing the songs, like, oh my gosh, I do not write sheet music. And so it's been so challenging, but it's so worth it. Like it's unreal.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I have big dreams for this musical. I'm actually hoping it can get a debut showing in September. I have a friend who is opening a theater potentially.
Wow.
And she said it would be really cool if my musical was in her first season for its debut showing. So I'm like saving up money for that so I can like really, have a good budget towards that and provide everything I need for it in terms of costuming and sets and all of that. And it's so crazy. I can't believe this is happening. I mean, I can't believe I'm even on a podcast right now for it.
Well, I am so grateful that you're coming on because I saw this. I was like, this is just so amazing. And the fact that like you're getting to share pieces of your story and getting to like help in your healing and help in someone else's healing is so cool. I really want to get into how like people can support your musical, but really quickly, I just wanted to ask if you could say one thing to like your younger self who's in the middle of everything going on really hurt, what is the one thing looking back that you would want her to know?
There's no harm in speaking out to my mom about it. I feel like that was the scariest thing, was letting her down, because growing up you always get the talk like, oh, don't go into rooms with boys or stuff, but a lot of the situations I was in was not stuff I expected. It was like very gradual and built up, and even then I just kept thinking, like, even if I did tell her that, she'd probably think, well, why did you keep hanging out with him and seeing him? Like, I just kept spiraling and thinking, like, she's like, I'm just guilty for even continuing to put myself in that situation, when that's not true. That is so not true. I was manipulated into staying, and I felt horrible about the situation already as it was, but he told me that he really cared about me and he didn't want to keep hurting me. It was his trial. And at that age, I didn't want to, like, hurt him more for leaving him for that. But also on top of that, I knew that if I did leave sooner, instead of resolving that with him and figuring it out, it could be someone else that's also going through that, and that's not great. So it was just a lot going through my head, but I have to tell myself, like, hey, you gotta stand your ground. I promise it's not worth hurting yourself over to continue being in a toxic place with someone. And go to your mom 100%. She's there for you to help you, not to judge you. I feel like that was the hardest thing for me, was feeling like she was just going to judge me and she was going to think I made this horrible choice myself, but that's not the case. Not at all. Yeah. I think that's a huge thing I'd take away from it.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so important to just recognize, because even moving forward, hopefully you'll never be put ever in a situation like that again. But there are other situations, where you're realizing, hey, I can go to my mom. Like, it's okay. So I think that that's awesome. What is your favorite part of the musical?
My favorite part? I think I'd have to say, I think this part's actually really interesting. So, I feel like the hardest thing about navigating a musical is that you still want extra bodies there, but a lot of the time you don't know how to build off of the musical for those extra bodies to, like, have songs still and still have, like, those opportunities. Mm-hmm. And for me, I think my favorite part about this musical was writing guilt as the ensemble, like the feeling of guilt, because it really added so much depth to the show. Guilt had their moments with Calvin, where there's like this new scene I wrote in my last edit, where I literally had Guilt like approach Calvin saying all these horrible things, like, I can't believe you do this, and he'd just be like, well, that's on them. Like, he was like redirecting it, and the Guilt literally was like, wait, what are you doing? Like, we can't be here for this. And then they, like, leave him because he's so, like, in his head about how he's not wrong, to where he's not allowing himself to, like, really sit in that feeling and try to build off of that to be better. I feel like guilt is such an ugly feeling, but at the same time, I feel like if we truly sit with guilt for a moment, we also can allow that feeling to build us to be better in an odd way. I'm not saying you should dwell on it, of course, because living in guilt is horrible. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, it's almost like, oddly enough, a stepping stone for you to realize, wow, I really did suck. I should really be better. Mm-hmm. And so for him not to, like, really, like, sit that in and to, like, push it away, that was, like, a huge scene that I feel like a lot of people will be like, wow, I did that. And, like, wow, I need to allow myself to sit with that and realize that that's not the right choice I made, and that I should recognize that soon enough, or I'll end up like that guy on the show. So
yeah,
it it was so crazy, but it was so cool. And I think that's like my favorite scene because I feel like a lot of us can relate to that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that that's awesome. And as a Christian, and I know you're a Christian, it's that feeling of conviction, right? Like the Holy
Absolutely.
Spirit convicting you is the best thing that can happen to you. Like conviction
Absolutely.
is a good thing. It's when you dwell in that and feel shame over that that's when it's no longer a good thing. And so I love how you were putting that, like taking the accountability. Like instead of being like Calvin and pushing it off, it's taking that accountability. Be like, yeah, I did do something wrong. Let's change it. Let's not dwell on it. So that's really
Exactly.
cool.
Yeah, I think that's definitely my favorite for sure.
Yeah. So how can people support you and support the I was about to say the podcast, not the podcast, the musical.
Of course. I think the biggest thing to support my musical is just simply like sharing the content of the musical because I think the biggest thing is like building an audience off of this that's like really interested because yeah, I think that's so important is that people can like see what this musical's about and what it can do for you. But also on top of that, I hope that I can raise the funds for it so it can actually like happen this September or even later, like someday down the road if I don't even make the funds for September. Totally fine, by the way. People take 5 years, even 7, to put up their show, so I'm not worried. My show's only a year old, so. But I think a huge thing that I would love to see is just a few like donations. You don't have to donate a crap ton. It takes even like $5 to $10 to make my day. And like it's so cool. I think I've already raised like 200 in donations alone, which is really
Wow.
great actually.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and this is like a 10,000 budget probably for just the set and like the costuming. It's so contemporary. You can literally get anything from like Goodwill or something. So I'm not too worried about budget wise. We can make anything work if we need to.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's my biggest thing is just funding the show. I think that's also been the most stressful, but it's all worth it. It'll happen. Yeah. But yeah, if anyone can donate, that's totally. I won't oppose.
I'll put the donation link is in your Instagram, right?
Yeah, it's in my Instagram bio.
Cool. I will well, I'm gonna put all of like the Instagram, everything will be in the show notes. So the link directly to donations and to your Instagram will be there.
Awesome. Oh my gosh, thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. The last question I ask everybody is, how can we be praying for you?
That's a good one. I would say the best way to pray for me would be probably just hoping that this show can like honestly praying for motivation. Big one for me. I feel like the hardest thing about this is that when you stop seeing like a lot of progress in what you're working on and you're also a little slower to get things done, you tend to like lose motivation. I think keep continuing to motivate me is a huge thing, but also on top of that, just building an audience. I think the biggest thing is that I just want people to see my story, and not only for that, but the messages it shares because it's so important and I know it can help so many people. Like I'm not expecting this to change the world, but even to like make an impact on some people once they walk out of that auditorium or once they finish a little reel on Instagram, like that is so huge to me. So building an audience, gaining some people to piquing their interest and also just motivation, that's a huge thing for me.
Yeah. Well, I know I'll be praying for you, and I know that my audience does too. So thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah.
I love talking to you, and I'm so excited for your musical.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much. I'm so grateful to be here, and oh my gosh, you're so incredible. Thank you so much.
Thank you guys so much for listening to this week's episode. I hope you guys enjoyed it because I definitely did. Lauren was so cool, and hearing her story was just so wonderful. I am so blessed and excited to have her on. So Thank you again so much for watching. Follow her and check out all her stuff. All of it's linked in the show notes. I'll see you guys for next week's episode. Have a great rest of your week, and God bless.